Hi everyone, this is Bhavani Venkatesh. I'm so excited about today's interview because this topic is very close to my heart, which is women empowerment and transformation. Let me get into some statistics before we deep dive into this conversation. So, as per the global estimates published by WHO, one out of three women in the world are subjected to physical or sexual abuse. It's just 33% of women who are occupying senior executive or senior management roles, and 17% of women are CEOs or head of any businesses. If you look at politics, there are very few women who are leading nations. And as per the recent study, it is shown that these countries are doing 600% better than the other nations, especially during this pandemic situation. Let's keep all of this aside and talk about each for equal. Is each for equal just celebrated on International Women's Day? Or is she celebrated, is she given equality every single day? Or is a dream suppressed with pain and suffering till the end? We are going to be talking about all of that in today's conversation. So I have an incredible guest that is Teuta Shabani Towler. And Toyota, welcome to this conversation, and I'm so honored to have you here today. To talk about Toyota, she is a founder of Women's Life nonprofit organization. She has worked with people around the world through United Nations in Kosovo as victim advocate for women going through domestic violence, CEO of Metro Digital Marketing. She's an author, speaker, and coach who's trained by John Maxwell team. She's also a women empowerment and mindset coach, mother of two beautiful children. She serves on the board of the American Civil Liberty Union of North Carolina and Outer Banks Hotline. Wow, Toyota, that's wonderful. And I can surely see the passion in you in uplifting and empowering women. So, my first question to you is, there are millions of women out there who are subjected to violence, be it physical, emotional, or sexual abuse and violence. So, that you have worked on this field for a long time. What do you have to say about this?
The one thing that I have to say is that it doesn't matter what culture you're from. I work with victims of domestic violence in Kosovo and a little bit in the United States. And the behaviors of the abusers, whether they're Albanians, Kosovo, Indians, or whatever, or Americans, are the same as any culture. And it's the same thing also for the victims or the survivors. I like to say the survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse. It's that the victimization of the victims, that the strategies that the abuser use, it's the behaviors are common across the globe. Some of it comes from cultural background where women are supposedly treated as a second-class citizen, but when you dive deep down into the psychological issues, men or even women, there are women who could cause an abuse as well, but very rare. The main reason the abusers do this is power and control. And a lot of times is because they are weak people. They lack secure self-confidence, and they try to control somebody else to make themselves feel empowered and feel good about themselves. And then the side effects of the women is not so much just the physical abuse, the bruises and the cuts and the wounds. The physical wounds heal, but the psychological wounds last for a very long time, if not lifetime. And it's very hard for a lot of women to get out of that cycle, especially in the rural countries when there's not a lot of help available to the survivors.
I get that completely. Is there any story that you can share with us that people can resonate to this?
The first thing that I would suggest for women who are abused, any kind of abuse, whether a physical, mental, or sexual abuse, is that you have to believe that it's not your fault. Nobody, you don't deserve to get beaten up. Nobody should hit you or insult you in a way that hurts your feeling or your heart and your skin and your whole body. Nobody. That's the first thing, because a lot of times women kind of blame themselves for the abuse. Oh, I didn't dress nicely. I didn't clean the house well, or I didn't take care of the kids, or I didn't prepare his favorite dish, or he had a bad day at work. Those are all nonsense excuses. None of that deserves violence towards you. None of it. So what you need to do is find a place where you can think clearly and figure out a way to get resources that are available to you to get out of that situation. It's hard to think when you are in a victim mode, because all you think, what is happening to me, what's happening to me. But it's also what is happening for me, because some of these things that happen for you, they are your wake-up call. They're the things that are supposed to trigger you to get out of the situation, get better, and also help somebody else who is in a similar situation. And once you are able to get in a quiet place, think, what are my resources? And a lot of times, if you meditate, you will have your own answers within. It's hard to have an answer and hard to think clear when you are running around in a box like a hamster wheel, nonstop, running the same thing over and over. And also clearing up your head, whatever the abuser has put in your head, you need to declutter, clear up your head, go in a quiet place, think about, what are my options? What are my resources? Who do I know that can help me? Who is out there that does this kind of work? What women have gone through this kind of abuse and they got out of it? How did they handle that? Once you get into that solution mode, I'm going to find a solution, I'm going to get out of this, you're always going to find a way out. I worked in Kosovo in an area called Skanderaj, which is where the war started, and it was the area that was destroyed the most by the war. I chose the worst area to work at. Also, the mentality in that area was very, very low towards women. They were treated like a second-class citizen. A lot of them were not educated. A lot of them did not have a job. They're housewives with raising children. And they didn't really believe that there's any other option. And when I started working with UN in that area as a translator initially, I found out there are all these women that were being abused, and the cops were not even doing their jobs. They were kind of like, okay, well, she came to report, nothing happened. And that's when I got involved. I was like, this is wrong. These people need to go to jail. This woman cannot go back to the same guy that just beat her up. So that's when I started and I founded the nonprofit Women's Life. The one story that I want to share with you is once I started the nonprofit, I was going on the radio and TV and published a magazine, and we did field work. We had 52 villages, and we would go to each house and talk to women. Sometimes the guys would not let us talk to them. They're like, no, you don't come here and emancipate our women. We don't need you. We're happy with the way things are. Of course they are. But the one thing that struck me was we started a crisis line, and any woman who had access to a phone, which was sometimes very difficult for them because they didn't have a phone, there was no internet at all. But this woman in particular found a phone, called the office, and told the volunteer, because we had volunteers running the crisis line, and said, tell Teuta Shabani to meet me at this wedding, and I'm this and this and this. And she had the whole story. I need her help. She needs to meet me at this wedding. So I crashed the wedding. I show up and I'm like, well, she's my friend from high school, and she wanted, to party at a wedding. So we did an initial, and I didn't even know what this person looked like, but obviously she knew what I looked like. So she came and approached me and hugged me so hard. And while she was hugging, she was telling me her story in my ear. To everybody else, like hundreds of people, and mostly women in that party, in that wedding, they just thought that we were just so happy that we haven't seen each other in so long. We were high school friends, but she was telling me her story, and I was trying to smile while she was whispering in my ear her horrible story. And I could feel her heart was just like pounding on my chest. She was so nervous. And I held her back and I said, I got you back. I got you back. And she almost started crying. we were just like having fighting tears because we were being watched by all these people at a wedding. So I was like, okay, now we got to go dance. I mean, from just hearing that 2 minute hugging and whispering her story, I said, we got to go dance now. So we just went out there, did the traditional dance, made the little scene, and then we went into kind of like a behind the scene where nobody was paying attention anymore. And then she told me more of her story. And I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to run away. And the hardest thing for her was she had 2 children. And I said, what about your children? And she said, they're better off without me being abused. That my mother-in-law will take care of them. Once I get my act together, I'll go back and get the kids. But right now, I have to take care of my kids. If I go back one more beating, I think I'm going to die. And that same day, I took her. She was like, I need to leave. So when everybody got, when the party was the highest, that's when she got in my car, which was, I was very few women in that area drove a car, let alone convertible. So I made quite a scene showing up at a wedding with a convertible. But everybody thought, oh, we're just a high school friend. And we left when the party was very exciting and everybody was dancing. And I took her to a women's shelter. And then from there, we just dealt with all of the battles in the court. And she ended up taking her kids. She took 6 months courses to be a journalist. And then when she finished the course, I hired her and she was one of my reporters.
Wow.
It is one of my, every time I think about the story, it just makes me cry. Because
I get
she was willing. Yeah, she was willing to do whatever it takes to get out of that abusive relationship.
Absolutely.
And yes,
absolutely.
she did get her children back. Last time I was in Kosovo in 2018, she actually bought her own house.
That's
and she
incredible.
still has those 2 children. It's just really, every woman has an option. We just have to believe it that we don't deserve this and there's a better way for us. And it starts with a mindset, which is what I do. And I'm really passionate about coaching now, is that whatever situation that you're in, it starts with a mindset and visualization. There's a life and you visualize it. And then every single day you work towards that.
Right, right. I just went silent hearing the story because I know there are, like I said, it's just not about this one woman that you're talking today. There are millions of women today who are going through this, and their suffering can be worse or even,
Right.
bad than what you're talking, right? So I think the women have that power in them. They could do so much. They get stuck because maybe they're not educated. They have children that they don't want to leave and get out of that relationship. They still take it and they go to their grave with that, the feeling of suppression, of pain and fear, right? So
It's the
I think,
fear. Yeah. It's the fear that keeps them, because the fear of getting out of the current situation and anything that is unknown is what keeps them stuck. But then when they get to the breaking point, it's like, okay, if I don't get out, I'm going to die. That's when they start to look for alternatives. And I think women now have more options throughout the world. It's like they have phones, they have cell phones, they have internet access. They have more options than, right after the war. When I was working in Kosovo, we didn't have any of those options. But now, especially here in United States, we have apps and crisis lines, and the hotline that I'm involved with. I don't work with victims now. I serve on their board of directors, but they have more options. We have a shelter, and it's all women need to believe that they deserve better and they can get out of it.
absolutely. I think there are many organizations like your nonprofit organizations across the world where women can take this support and they can
Yes.
go and seek support, or once they're in this situation they need to start collect this information to see where they can seek support. And also probably if they need to talk to a therapist or people that they need support, I think
Yes.
that is another important thing that I was thinking in my mind, where they need to express because I came across this line: depression is through suppression, and the only way to come out of that is through expression. So,
Yes.
what's your thoughts to it, Toyota?
I think depression has different versions. I've definitely been there myself. For me, it happened when I moved in United States because I lost the connections with people that I had in Kosovo, my family, my friends, and then the work that I did. It was just very meaningful for me. I worked 8 hours at UN, and then 8 hours at the nonprofits and a radio station and this and that. I was fulfilled. I lived in one of the poorest country in Europe, but I was happier, I was more fulfilled, and I had more money than living in United States. When I moved here, I felt lost. I couldn't. It's like my whole identity changed. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. It was very depressing moment to be in that kind of environment, and the lack of connection was and the lack of passion that kind of drove me into that ditch. It was very difficult. Um, but eventually I came out of it, and I wanted to mention that it's again seeking help. Like when you realize, okay, I'm going down badly, and I hid the depression for many years. Nobody knew, not even my partner knew it, because I was very good at masking it, because I still took care of the kids, I still ate healthy. Depression has different versions of it, and mine was, I just had like this hole inside myself that at the end of the day, I did everything I'm supposed to, but at the end of the day, I would just go to bed and sleep for 14 hours. That was my way of dealing with it.
Hmm.
And I started seeking help when I had started having a suicidal thoughts. I was like, oh my God, now it's real. It's real. That's when I told my partner, and I started seeing a therapist and started doing more mind-body connection, and realizing that it's that lack of connection and fulfillment that was getting me down. So yeah,
Absolutely.
seeking help, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of self-awareness and strength. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. In my coaching business, I often use the analogy of, when you fly on the airplane, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you assist children or anybody else. Because if you don't have enough oxygen for yourself, enough energy for yourself, you're not going to have the energy to deal with anybody else. And seeking help, especially if you have anxiety, depression, violence, those kind of things, it's highly recommended to speak to a therapist. And if you don't have therapists, read up information online. Do journaling is very empowering. You can write it down and then shred it or burn it. It's kind of like a release effect of it. Even when I started seeing a therapist, she made me write it down, everything that I was feeling, and then burn it. And it sounds really simple and stupid, but it works.
It works.
It really works. Yeah.
I think that
And the
negative energy is out of your body.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we don't really practice self-gratitude, self-love. We allow the external critics and things coming from the outside, but we don't stop and listen to our love, our self-love, our intuition. So one of the things that I highly suggest that also helped me is that when I go in the shower, that's when I practice self-love. Not in a sexual way. That's not what I'm talking about. It's the gratitude way. When we break a leg, we are like, oh my God, my leg's broken, and we're sad. But when it heals, or when it's not broken, we're not happy.
Right.
So I take that approach, which comes from Buddha, is that I wash my hair. I'm thankful for my brain. I'm thankful for my hair. I wash my eyes and my face, and I thank my eyes. Thank you for having this beautiful vision, because I can see my kids. I can see flowers. My nose, my mouth, I can smell, I can eat. As I go down through my body, I thank every part of my body, and I'm grateful for it. It's so powerful. It's so healing. It is unbelievable. Especially if you end it with cold water, it's even much better in the end.
Right. I think I just want to add on by saying that women always believe that they are 911 rescuers. They always have compassion towards others, and they don't have compassion to themselves. And I like what you told about gratitude, because we always sometimes even see gratitude, but we don't feel the gratitude. And every day we are judging ourselves. I think that
Yes.
judgment on ourselves should stop, and also forgive
Hmm.
ourselves and just look at life in a whole beautiful way.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I want to ask you, like, how can women show up and find themselves and self-promote? Because I see that lacking in women. I've been in the corporate environment for some time, because the way men promote themselves to the way women promote themselves is very different. And it's a funny thing that when men go for smoking, they're doing all kind of networking and all that. Um,
Hmm.
how can women get into that self-promotion and networking and all of that?
Well, I think it comes down to self-confidence. And but for me, it's also I don't want to sound like when you're self-confident, but then you don't want to look arrogant. So we're expected to have our feminine, caring nature, but then if we're showing our success or we're going after what we want, we're treated as an arrogant. And I'm not going to even say the words that we get called when we're successful, and it's hard to balance that feminine aspect of ourselves, which is our authenticity, along with being successful. And I think there's a way to do it both ways. And I see that it's mainly difficult in the political area more so than in business, because we're expected to be this tough and strong and not show emotions, but that's not who we are. We are women, we are full of emotions, and that's what makes us human, that's what makes us beautiful, and we're
Right.
caring people. So I think it's important for women to have an understanding of who they are. If I am going to believe this is what I want to do, and there's no way nothing is going to stop me, I'm going to go after it. It's just having that self belief. That's what it comes down to. Not be afraid to ask for help when you are overwhelmed, and not be not worry about if I don't know how to do something, find the help to do it. Focus on areas that you're good at and what you really want to do, and the stuff that you're not really good at and you don't really want to do it, don't force yourself to learn something, a new skill, just because it's a hot topic. Focus on what you want to do, and then leave the rest to people who are good at. I know, for example, there's many times in the board meetings I would say something, and then 5 minutes later a guy would say exactly the same thing, and everybody's like, yeah, that's a great idea, we need to speak up. And I stood up and I said, I just said that 5 minutes ago. It's in the minutes, but it's okay. I don't mind sharing the credit, but I need you guys to pay attention. Another time was when women have to speak also for each other. There are times when another person was rude to another woman in a meeting, and I would call out and say, that was inappropriate. Don't do that ever again, because I'm going to embarrass you in front of everybody. That's not acceptable. We
Right.
have to take that power. We have to stand up. And a lot of times, I don't think the guys mean it to be rude in that way. They're just not aware of it. And if we tell them how we want to be treated, then most of them are willing to work with us.
I
But
agree.
we have to know ourselves first. We have to know what we want first, communicate that effectively, then things will happen.
I agree with you, because there's a saying that when men raise their voice, they're called powerful. But when women raise their voice, they're called nasty, mean, and there are other terms that gets added onto
Yeah.
it, right? So I
Yeah.
kind of, can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I never close my conversation without asking about our future generation. What do you have to say to our little girls? Because the way we were brought up was very different. And
Yes.
the way the kids today, they are different from us, but also the way we should bring up our girls, and including boys, should be very
Right.
different. I think the fearlessness needs to be put in them, because when they go through this abuse, molestation, or any kind of violence, they know where to question, they know where to seek support, or even make noise, speak up and show up. What do you have to say
Right.
about that?
I think the younger generation that I'm seeing now, it's more aware of the problems, because the schools have gotten really good about promoting. For example, here in the United States, there's a program that the hotline does in schools. No means no, whether that's physical touch, abuse, or anything. No means no. So the girls are aware about that, and the boys are having to learn whether they like it or not. The younger generations, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I have to say that she and her friends are much more aware of things before they even happen. And it's empowering to see that. I love seeing that in the younger generation. They're more inclusive. They're not as judgmental. Like if you're a Muslim or a Christian or Hindu, or if you're a gay or lesbian, they don't, black or white, they don't really care as much. This, at least her generation that I'm seeing. And I think as a parent, it's important that we work and make sure that the kids have self-esteem, having that self-confidence. And it's the difficult time for kids, especially when they're going through the teenage years, because they're learning to figure themselves out. They don't know who they are yet. So that's like an empty computer. We just load them with good information, but also showing by example. For example, if you set up a healthy boundary and say, I am available XYZ, and the rest of the time, I'm going to spend time for myself, or I'm going to spend time with my family, that's how they learn. If you're taking your kid to the bank and then you show them how to shop on budget, that's also another way of teaching them. So there's all these opportunities that we have as parents. It's a huge responsibility, but I think most of the people are doing a good job raising kids. The challenges that we have now is that kids are overloaded with information from social media, and sometimes you just have to help them, kind of steer them in the right direction. For example, my daughter is into a self-discovery journey and the spirituality. And so what I did is I went on her Instagram account and added all the people that I think are important, and public speakers, to materials, to movies, and have really deep, meaningful conversation. Right now, what I see is happening with young generation is that they don't feel heard and they don't feel validated. So one of the things that we have to do is when they say, I'm so frustrated with school because now I have to do everything online, I don't see my friends, blah, blah, blah. Well, don't tell your kids, you're not the only one. The whole world's going through that. What they want to hear is that, yes, that's horrible. I'm sorry you're going through this. What can I do to help you? They need validation, especially young girls. They need validation more than anything else. And with boys too, we got to teach the boys to be respectful towards girls and just be great human beings. And the only way we can teach them is being by good examples ourselves. So again, back to being a good self-development on yourself, working on yourself, being a good within yourself, then that shows you can show up for everybody else, including your kids.
I got you. Thank you for this valuable inputs. And do you have anything to say before we close this conversation?
I just think women need to support each other a little bit more and speak for each other, whether that is in the board meetings, motherhood, political campaigns, and things of that nature. Women need to come together and support one another. That's one thing that I feel we don't do enough of.
All right. Thank you so much. I think it was
welcome.
A pleasure having you here today. And before I close the conversation, I want to tell all the women out there, don't let the violence pull you into silence. Show up, speak up, care for yourself before you care for others, and you have an incredible power in you. So thank you everyone for watching this. And you can reach me and Toyota on social media platforms. That will be up on the video when the video is out. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day ahead.
Thank you so much for having me, Bhavani. I had a great time chatting with you.
Thank you very much.